Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. The issue of FGM, so female genital mutilation. It might go on long, so I might do it in a part 1, part 2. So stay tuned for the part 2 next week. I hope you enjoyed this first part so far and hope you come back next week to watch the second part. Thank you, bye bye. Next, another thing that I've learned in the last few months that I think is, oh my god, huge, is the fact that FGM takes place all over the world. All over the world. We have this notion that it's just taking place in Africa. It's just Africa. And it's just black people. And it's just like uneducated people in like tribes. Or like they're primitive or they're not really living in civilized societies. That's kind of the notion we have around FGM, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, it does take place in African countries, but it takes place all over the world. It takes place by white Christians in the US. It takes place in Indonesia. It takes place in Europe. It takes place in Ireland. It is everywhere, and I think it's super, super important to realise that, because we can kind of think like, oh, we're in Europe, you know, it doesn't really affect us here now, that's just in Africa there. And it's like, oh my god, no. And if we continue with that narrative or with that stereotype, we're never going to solve it here. It's never going to be tackled or fixed if we keep thinking, oh, it's just over there now in Africa. And no, it's not. Like, you could have a neighbour that could be affected by FGM, or that is at risk of being affected by FGM. And I think as well why it's super, super important to realise that is that a lot of people sometimes might use it to fuel their xenophobia or their racism. You know, they might say, oh, you know, it's just black people in Africa doing that. And it's like, that's just so not true. It literally could be a white person down the street from you that's doing it. You know, it's just like not fair to put that on one group of people. And it's probably not a coincidence either that it is put mainly on black people from Africa. Even though obviously it is quite prevalent in a lot of African countries, it's not coincidental that it's like just seemed to be black African people, because obviously, you know, we're all just violent racists. So it's kind of like, oh, shocker that we put it on them. Not. We need to realise that it's happening everywhere, and this is not just an African issue. And on that, again, my handy little booklets. This is, again, these are all from End FGM. They're like super, super helpful, but they're all on their website as well. This is kind of an infographic, basically, numbers of survivors of FGM living in Europe, just to kind of drive it home that this is occurring in Europe. And obviously these numbers are like always changing, probably increasing, but just to show you that Ireland, if you can see it there, survivors of FGM living in Europe, in Ireland, it's 5,277, or it was at the time of publishing. Like, Ireland is a small country, that's crazy. Like, and that's like one of the smallest out of all like the European countries. Like, that's crazy. And like it's just really, I think when you're kind of woken up to that, or kind of you're kind of alert to the fact that it is happening in Ireland and it is happening in you. Like, at least when I kind of realised that, I was like, oh my god, that's crazy. And it makes total sense, you know. And this could be, you know, this could be by people that have migrated here, and they, you know, it could have happened to them, you know, in Ireland, or they might have been taken back to their kind of country of origin to have it done. So it's just like, so we really kind of need to look at people who have been affected by it, but also people who are at risk of it happening, and be like aware of what are the signs of risk. So next, as I said, I'm going to talk about the different types of FGM. I'm not necessarily going to go into detail, but just to alert you to the fact that there are different types. There are 4 major types, basically type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. And as I said before, none of these types is worse or better than the other. They are different in terms of exactly what is done or how much is taken off. And yeah, just as before, none is worse or better than the others, and it's simply, you know, again, as I said before, we're not trying to be like, oh, this is the worst, so all the rest of them are better. No. 4 types, all bad for women and girls. I guess another thing that I want to talk about is, and I don't want to talk about too much, and you'll probably see why, but it's the issue of male circumcision. sometimes you'll hear the term female circumcision when talking about this, and I think it's super, super dangerous and harmful. Honestly, personally, I don't think that male circumcision should be done, only later in life if you literally have health problems and you need it, but I don't think it should be done on babies. But to call it female circumcision and equate it to male circumcision, I think is completely wrong and just not accurate, and it almost normalizes it, because male circumcision is normalized, unfortunately, I think, and I think calling it female circumcision also tries to normalize it as well. And I think as well it equates the two, and it's like when we're talking about FGM, you know, sometimes people might be like, oh, but like what about male circumcision? And it's like, okay, let me stop you right there. It's not the same at all, and here is why. So, first point, majorly, physically, completely different genitals, completely different organs. It's just physically a completely different procedure, if you will. Male circumcision, done on a penis. Female genital mutilation, done on a vulva. Also, there are completely different reasons behind doing it. As I kind of said before, I touched on why it's done, you know, kind of making your daughter marriageable, or making her normal, or making her kind of a member of society, but it is fundamentally rooted in gender inequality. It is fundamentally rooted in misogyny and hatred of women. A lot of the times, if it's not used to, you know, introduce you into society, or, you know, make you marriageable, it is to stop your sexual urges, it is to stop your sexual activity, it is to just control women by their sexuality and by their genitalia. And when you look at why male circumcision is done, it's just not the same at all. And so they just cannot be compared at all. Oh my god. And furthermore, the repercussions. The repercussions of male circumcision versus female genital mutilation are again completely different. Male circumcision can be performed, and again I'm saying this as a person who is not for male circumcision, but it can be performed and you can live your life without ever noticing that something was done to you. You know, obviously you know that you're circumcised, but you can live your life without any major health problems as a result of it. Female genital mutilation, on the other hand, can kill women. It can kill girls. Girls literally bleed out as a result of this. You may never have an orgasm. You might, you know, but you might not. It can stop, just sexual feeling. It can cause serious infections and serious health problems, and problems just literally using your genitalia for what it is made for. You know, it can just have so many different repercussions. So yeah, so my point with that is just that it's just not the same as male circumcision at all, and just not to equate the two when speaking about this, because they're just completely different in every single way. And then finally, something else I learned is, you know, the kind of issue of like graphic imagery when talking about this. I think sometimes we might think like, oh, you know, graphic imagery of it might kind of shock people into thinking, okay, this needs to be solved, and that will help the matter. And it's like, first of all, if someone has been the victim of FGM and they're, you know, sitting in the room where you're showing graphic imagery, like, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, that's just like re-traumatizing all over again. Like, that's not going to be good. If you're showing it to people who are practicing FGM and the people who are actually doing the cutting, they probably don't want to see that. They probably don't want to be reminded. You're using that imagery to make a point, and to make a point that it's really bad. So again, if you're a practicing community and you think you're doing this and you are doing this in your mind and, you know, in your culture to protect the woman and to be good for the woman, if you have someone showing you graphic images in a bad way, I think, okay, but you're just judging me and you're being offensive, so why should I listen to you? It's just like not helpful at all. I think it can be spoken about without having to use graphic imagery. It can be done through like art, you know, that can be like drawings of it. It doesn't have to be actual pictures of it being done. I know with the End FGM European Network, they use a flower. I actually have it here, and they have a flower, and I really like it. It's it's purple, first of all, because purple is kind of the colour used all over the world to when talking about kind of gender-based violence. and violence against women. So all their colouring is purple. I think it's done really, really well, and it's really subtle, but it really drives it home. I'll show it to you. It's kind of like, it's a flower, but then they just have like basically incisions along it. And I think it's super simple but effective, I think. And yeah, I think that's kind of a prime example of how it can be shown and how it can be done. And yeah, I just think it's kind of a good way of doing it. So yeah, I mean, I say it's such an important issue. I've barely scratched the surface there on what this issue is about. There is so much more information out there, and so much that I still don't know, and that I'm learning. But I'm happy that I'm talking about it, and hopefully you'll learn something, and you might tell your friends and pass it along, and get more people talking about this. One of the reasons behind FGM is fundamental gender equality. So that's why I'm talking about it. Obviously, I'm a giant feminist. I hate gender inequality, and I want it to be my life's purpose to fight gender inequality. So when the root of something is based in gender inequality, that's what you gotta do. Fight it. And hopefully, you know, over time, just having more conversations and empowering women, and, you know, describing women as, you know, human beings deserving of rights. Hopefully this practice will stop, because it is extremely harmful to women and girls, and not nice. So that is the video this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope you tell your friends. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, let me know for any comments or any suggestions for me to go and learn things, or any links. So yeah, let me know, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.